I talk to a spirit. She comes in my dreams.
What is the path to awakening supposed to look like, to feel like? How do you know if you are on it? We ask these very sacred and sometimes vulnerable questions to many different women from all walks of life. A conversation that needs to be shared and heard. I'm Jo Hendy.
I'm Amanda Parker.
And welcome to the Girl Awakening podcast.
Hello. I preempted hello. We said hello before we even pushed recording. We're excited.
We are excited.
How are you? I'm good.
That's good.
I'm very enjoying the way the year's flowing, and there's so much work that's been happening already in a very short space of time, but it all feels like there's a willingness, because it's just about leaping into that space and keeping on going, not looking back.
The year of the eight number, very powerful.
Yes.
Welcome to our Girl Awakening podcast. Once again, we have another incredible guest lined up, our second for the year, which we're super excited about. I'm going to hand it over to you, lovely.
Yeah. Our guest today is Nadia Gledhill. She's a QHHT and past life regressionist. Her specialty is in helping you gain clarity and direction through quantum healing hypnosis, which if any of you are familiar with Dolores Cannon, you will know all about that. It's pretty exceptional, really.
Oh my God, it's so interesting. I find it so interesting.
Yeah.
Being a fan of Dolores.
Oh, yes. Just a wee fan.
Just a little fan.
And Nadia works with past life regression and tarot reading as well, to combine all her skills and take it into a spectrum that allows her energies to flow through. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you on. I've actually been following Nadia on Instagram for a little while, and her posts always resonate. So I said to Amanda one day, I'm going to reach out to this lady.
Yes.
Because her post is so on point, and I love what she's doing in the space. So
Thank you. I love sharing lots of information.
Yeah. It's so good. And what I love too is that you're so well-rounded. It's not, you don't just focus on one area. It's like all areas, which I think that's the space we're kind of moving into.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's just, I think, me to a T a little bit. I'm, into everything. And I've got a very open mind about a lot of things. I love to learn about everything. I don't like to have any blinkers on. So yeah, I think, that describes me to a T.
Perfect. Sounds like a beautiful way to move through life. So we're going to find out about that. We're going to ask you, Nadia, how did your awakening begin?
Oh, okay. So, that's tricky. I think it was, for me, a very gradual process over the years from when I was a child. But I also think along that process, or as I was going through it and moving through life, I had a few harsh shoves as well along the way, and those few moments. But, ever since I can remember, ever since I was a little child, I was always questioning everything, much to the upset of my parents. I was the but why child, and I was always into anything, paranormal, ET. I remember my dad had lots of books on the topics. If ever there were documentaries on TV, I'd be up watching them. I didn't watch normal, I suppose, shows that, that were common for kids of my age to watch. I was more into all of that kind of stuff, into my dad's books. So I've always been really interested, I suppose, and open to it my whole life. I remember even when I was little, if someone asked me what I wanted to do, I wanted to be a Ghostbuster.
Yes.
I loved the Ghostbusters. But I think for me, when, honestly, I can't remember how old I was. If I had to take a guess, maybe 8 or 10, somewhere in that vicinity, because I always used to feel presence around, especially in the home where I lived with my parents. And I recall one night I woke up went out of my bedroom. It was the middle of the night. And I recall seeing what I can only describe now as a spirit at the end of the hallway. And I remember sort of thinking, oh, and I sort of, stared at it for a little while, thinking it would go away, and it didn't. And I remember going back in my room, and I wasn't sure whether to be scared or not. I was interested, but also a little bit scared. So I walked back out of the room, and she was still there. I was like, well, this is a bit weird. So anyway, I went back to bed. I held on till the morning. I didn't go to the bathroom.
And as we do when we're young, hey.
No. Although the funny thing was, I also recall I wasn't like frightened or really scared. It was just I felt very unsure, and so I thought, oh, I'm just going to stay in here. And that actually happened again a little while later. But this time I actually woke up and she was at the end of my bed. So that was when I was really young, and I suppose I started seeing things like that. But yeah, I was always aware of a presence around, and as I said, I've always had that interest in that area. So, in anything paranormal or ET related, even the occult, I was always into learning about everything. And even as a child, I remember, my dad and I used to, get out the binoculars or the telescope, and we'd look out at the moon or out to the stars. And I used to love things like that. I remember in the 80s when Halley's Comet was coming around, and it was a big deal. And we went down to, I think it was Jells Park or something like that in, where's that? Anyway, somewhere here in Melbourne. And yeah, to see the comet, and I was really into that stuff. And I always had this feeling there was more out there. What that was, I didn't quite know. I've always believed in extraterrestrials. I don't think we're the only species around, whether it be, on this planet, on this dimension, or somewhere else. But I suppose that was a very slow process for me when I was young. I had all these interests and little things like, seeing apparitions, or I used to have things move around the house. I remember we had this vase in my parents' living room, and it had like fake, leaves in it.
Yeah.
And the vase was maybe, I don't know, 1.5 feet tall, and the leaves had really long stems. It was like ivy that hung down. Very, very Italian. It was, I don't know if you can picture it, right?
Yes.
Italian parents. It was on a pillar with and so I had this ivy hanging down, and I remember I was in the lounge room, had my back to it, and I heard this tinging noise, like something knocking on the ceramic vase, just a couple of tings. So I've just turned around, and as I've turned, the whole leaves, like they just fell on the ground.
Wow.
And I remember staring at it thinking, how is that possible?
Yes.
Because the stems were quite long. It would have had to have been lifted up and out and dropped it. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a bit weird. And it freaked me out. So
Someone trying to get your attention.
They were trying to get my attention. But yeah, a lot of things like that, TV turning on and off.
Wow.
Thank goodness, actually, I don't have a lot of those things now. It was more when I was a child. I used to have a lot of that stuff going on.
Yeah.
But my dad would always really, I suppose it's funny, in hindsight when we look back. So at the time, I didn't realize my dad was encouraging it, encouraging the interest. But now looking back, I see that he was, because he would, get the books on the stuff I was interested in and all that kind of stuff, and do activities with me that were that way related, or
wow.
you know what I mean? So at the time, I didn't really realize it. I thought, I don't know, he was just, I don't know, spending time with me.
Yeah.
I love how that he had the books that kind of, already on the shelf there that encouraged you to pursue something that was part of you.
Yeah. I loved it. Even things like when I was a child, the phone, this is before caller ID, the home phone would ring, and I'd think, oh, that's so-and-so. And then, we'd answer the phone and it was them. You know, that kind of stuff used to happen to me a lot.
Yeah.
And I suppose really my childhood was very much like that. So it was all these little things that I suppose led to bigger shoves later on. I think maybe like many of us, you know, I probably wasn't listening to
That's
the
so
nudges.
true. Yeah. I heard someone say just yesterday actually that, and it was a similar kind of question where they said they were always scared of the dark when they were a child because they always felt like there was someone watching them. And I'm like, God, I used to be really scared of the dark too. And then went on to learn later on when they've had a reading or something like that where that was their, you know, their higher self or another being or someone coming to try and communicate with them. But the thought of even thinking that it was somebody else other than the boogeyman is so way out of your reality that that's all you think that it is. Where it's someone coming, trying to communicate with you that wants to actually be with you because they love you, not to be scared of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's funny you say that because, you know, for example, when I had a lot of those incidents as a child, you know, the falling leaves and the seeing spirits, and I remember one night actually I had a ceramic piggy bank as well, and it got smashed on the floor in the middle of the night. It was so loud, you can imagine a piggy bank smashing on what I have timber floorboards.
Yeah.
And just coins scattering everywhere in the middle of the night. And it was so loud, my parents came running in because they thought, what happened? You know, like it woke them up. And I was just sitting in bed going, I don't know. And I'm looking across the room and there's this piggy bank on the floor.
Yeah.
And they're telling me off. And
Yeah.
I haven't moved from the bed. But I was just like, you know what? It was middle of the night. I just copped it on the chin and I just went to sleep and I thought, oh. But it never frightened me.
Yeah.
I never had that feeling of fear. It was more curiosity and I suppose, just being a little bit unsure of what exactly was going on. But something was trying to get my attention. And I don't think I was really listening or paying too much attention to what was going on. You know. But then I suppose, look, up until sort of thinking about this recently, and I think up until about 2012, you know, I used to have incidents like that, but other than that, my life was pretty, you know, normal. I mean, it still is, but I didn't sort of really get any big shoves until that point. You know, I always, up until that point, and even a little bit after, always felt very like I always felt this pull, like there's something I should be doing, but I couldn't work out what it was, you know. You know, and it's funny, I hear this a lot from clients as well, you know, they feel like they need to be doing something else or doing something with their life, but they can't figure out what that is.
Yeah.
And I started, you know, you read a lot of things and hear a lot of things, and, you know, people always say, follow your passion, do this, you know, you always hear that. And I always think, but I've got lots of passions. I don't know what to follow. And none of that really resonated with me. But I always knew that in some way, shape or form, I wanted to help people, because when I'm able to help people or when I've helped someone, it always made me feel really good inside. So that resonated.
Yeah.
You know, that was a driver for me. And, you know, I considered careers like counseling, psychology, even nursing very briefly, but none of those really sort of drew me in. To be honest, I couldn't be bothered studying them. And for me, that meant it's not meant for me. So I just went through life normally, you know. But up until 2012, everything just kind of petered along. And I think one massive turning point for me, which, you know, at the time I didn't notice this either.
We never do.
Right?
Always.
It happens, right? But in 2012, I had an incident. It doesn't even sound that big, but for me, it was huge at the time. I had a very close friendship group,
Mhm.
And one of the girls in that group created a little bit of havoc, and it sort of made a lot of us sort of drift apart. Some I lost contact with at that point, and others I still have a lot of love for. We still connect very, very occasionally, but nothing like what we used to. It's, you know, and looking back, that was a point in my life. I feel like it was almost like a shift in timeline. I feel like there were all these people that were just taken away from me, so that, yeah, I just don't think that we were meant to move forward together from that point on, if that makes sense. Like,
Totally.
Absolutely. It's one of our questions, but you've gone way down the track.
Yeah.
oh, there you go. But yeah, but for me, that was another, I suppose, that was a big awakening moment for me.
Like you were getting pushed.
Yeah, it was a really big push, because not only was it affecting my friendship group, or affecting my close friendship group, it was affecting my employment, because one of the ladies worked at my job, and I loved my job. You know, the people I worked with, and, you know, but at the same time, I always felt like that's not what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And I used to get all these little nudges to leave there and things like that. And I never listened. And then this incident blew up. I didn't leave there at that point. The other people left. And we, just proceeded to, Anyway, so sorry, my head's gone in a different direction.
We can feel you, like we can feel like this is, I want to say, like, because we get this feeling of that part of you that's just like open to the universe and the cosmos, and we as a child, you know, this energies of the spirits coming, thinking, oh, Nadia, she's open, let's hop in and say hi.
I know, and I'm like, no, not now. Not now, don't distract me.
Yes.
But it's funny, you know, because I look back and I think, you know, even though it was a slow progression for me up until 2012, that was a big turning point. Looking back, there were also a lot of lessons that I learned in that time. So I almost feel like for me, it was this lesson after lesson after lesson. And I mean, they haven't really stopped, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I feel like that sort of history for me formed that foundation for things moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, I had to really reevaluate who I was, what I wanted, everything like that.
Yeah. So were you in relationship? Were you single?
How old were you at 2012, lovely?
2012, how old was I? It's bad. I don't do ages.
11 years ago.
Yes.
I was 30. Yeah, 30.
Yeah.
To think about that, I was born in 82. So
Yeah.
I was 30. I was married. I'm still married.
Yeah.
You know, and
so you were passing through life. You were moving through life, like going la 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 la.
Pretty much, yeah.
All of a sudden, oh.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, to think that a friendship group splitting could have been so traumatic for it really was. You know, it sent me into a downward spiral. I actually was married before once that lasted 12 months. It's a long story, but you know, that split was nowhere near as bad as this. I know that sounds terrible, but I think because the marriage split I could see coming.
Yeah.
It was completely out of left field what had happened. But
and
yeah,
girls, your friendships group, just like your girls, your squad, you know, you've got each other, you talk about everything, you do stuff together that, you know, like you bonds you constantly, you know, and then when there's a fragment in there or someone suddenly goes rogue and it creates friction amongst the group, it's your whole world does change, because it's like, oh, who do I trust? They know everything about me. Like, what have I done wrong? You know, what's going on? You know, it's just so many questions. It is a big awakening experience.
Yeah, and it was really difficult too, because I would only feel comfortable at home, because even at work I was uncomfortable because there were some of those people there. And so it was in my work life. My social life was almost non-existent at that point, because I didn't know who to catch up with. So I really only had my home and my husband, you know, and he was and he still is, you know, a huge rock for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really sent me into a downward spiral. You know, I got diagnosed with depression, anxiety, all that kind of jazz.
Do you mind if we just ask what was the trigger point? Like, is it like what was a particular person that was being separated out, or like what was the dynamic? Without, you don't need to be too specific, but
I don't want to say too much because I honestly I don't have really any bad blood there anymore. But it was someone essentially just being who I was very close with. Being or essentially telling lies to another friend in the group about things I had done, I had said. It was so completely random and made up and hurtful, because not only was it she saying I was saying things about her friend, but about her children. Like it was just nasty stuff. And this sort of it just makes no sense. And that's what confused me and upset me the most. You know, I was thinking, what have I done? What have I done to deserve this? Why? Just it was very, very, very odd. But then, you know, as I said, you know, that caused problems in that group. It caused problems at work. It was crazy. So I had nowhere
to hide.
On. The universe has a funny way of wanting to move us into a place where we need to start playing from, kind of thing, isn't it? It's like when we hear this story a lot, you know, where there's something that's really heart-wrenching and in the moment, in the time, in the presence of it, it feels like the worst thing happening for you. But the universe is basically saying, sorry, Nadia, you don't fit in this space anymore. We need you over here.
Yeah.
And it's going to hurt for a little while, but, you know, you're going to be okay. We're just going to move you from here to there.
Yeah. And for me, I feel like it was at that moment where, like I said, it was almost like a shedding of old skin. It was like things just had to go.
Yeah.
But one thing I didn't want to leave was my job, because I loved it. I loved the people. I loved my boss. Like it was close to home. It ticked all the boxes.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm hearing a lot of things that are easy and convenient for you. We're not going to
comfortable.
Yes. I know that's the problem, isn't it? You get really comfortable with certain things and you stick with them.
Yeah.
But you know, but then of course, you know, with everything else that followed, I really sort of spiraled up and down. This lasted for quite a few years, actually. And at the time, I was blaming, even though I loved my job, I blamed my job. And I think a lot of people also tend to do this. I was very much like, my work's making me unhappy, work's making me stressed. At the same time, I wouldn't leave, but I blamed my workplace and my workload and all that kind of stuff. One day, actually, I had resigned, or told my boss, because we were very close, and I said to him, look, just want to let you, I was quite senior in the company. I helped run his businesses, and I said, look, I'm going to start looking for work. You know, I can't do this anymore. It's very stressful. He talked me out of it. He said, no, stay, you know, whatever. And so I did again. And things were okay for a while.
I was about to say, oh.
Yeah, I know, right? You can just see.
Yeah.
But actually, no, you probably couldn't see the ending. It's quite interesting what happens. But so then I, as I said, stayed on. Then a few years later, I had another big incident happen when I was, for me, it was quite big, 2016 that was, when my father passed away. And for me, that was huge. Like I was Dad's girl. You know, we were very close. You know, he nurtured a lot of my interests. You know, when I was a kid, I'd be, you know, the quirky one or the unusual one because I was into some weird stuff. Well, not weird, but compared to the other kids my age. But But
You were running around with a
the
vacuum cleaner sucking up ghosts while,
yeah, pretty much.
playing on the swings.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't see what's wrong with that, but anyway, some people do. So, but yeah, he always sort of nurtured me, and yeah, that really, really shook me, and again led me down this path of what am I doing with my life? You know, you start questioning. We don't know how long we're here for, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then so that then led me down another path of again trying to figure out what it was I wanted to do, because again I was blaming my job.
Yeah.
Which is crazy now that I think about it, but at the time it was very logical. I just blamed it.
And our job is very much a part of our identity, isn't it? So it's almost like looking in the mirror but not looking in the mirror. It's kind of looking at a part of ourselves without looking at a part of ourselves. So
correct. And you know, and yes, I used to get very stressed and frustrated at work, but it was probably because internally I was already very unsettled, very unsure, you know, not in a good place. So when you go into, or when you have a job that demands a lot from you and you're already near breaking point, it doesn't actually take much to tip you over, but that's not the job's fault. It's not the employment's fault, right? Like, it's not their fault. I was already on edge. And, you know, but I at that point, I had some really good people in that work who I became quite close with. And they were also, you know, of the spiritual persuasion, you know, into all that kind of stuff. And so we formed some pretty close bonds. And that was a really good support for me at that time. And was just...
and probably just a little crack opening up where Nadia was getting to express those other parts of herself as well in a
as you know, as an adult, because you tend to, when you're not surrounded by those types of people, you tend to hold back or repress a lot of things because, you know, you don't want to talk about the woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
You know, in a corporate environment where everyone's about business and like kind of, you know, you normally don't do that. But yeah, so I made some pretty close contacts there at that time. But yeah, that, you know, when my dad passed away, how do I put this? I really feel like he started shoving a lot of things in my way. Because there were just things that like like, and it's even just silly things like the synchronicities, things that would happen. You would think of something and then, oh, there it is. Or I'd think, oh, you know, I'd really like a, I don't know, geez, you know, I haven't heard an ice cream truck in years. God, I'd kill for an ice cream. And then half an hour later, there'd be an ice cream. You know, just stuff like that you just think, oh my gosh.
Validation.
Validation, yeah. And just nudges and things that were put in my path, essentially. I all of a sudden, and it's funny, looking back, I'm trying to think now, I can't even think how it happened, but somehow I went from having no spiritual friends to all of a sudden being this was only a few years ago, but then, you know, all of a sudden being in spiritual development classes and coming across all these opportunities to you know, develop and learn and do all these things, and I wasn't looking for them. I suppose that's probably the best way to put it. Everything was just being thrown at me. And I've had quite a few mediums actually say to me, oh, you know, your dad's behind this. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'd believe that. You know, he was if he could get in there with something, he would.
I love that. I love that how people come, you know, there.
Your number one fan, your number one fan, and he was like
totally there.
It honestly felt like that. Yeah, it honestly did. I mean, I even used to have, I think the creepiest thing that used to happen to me, and I'm spewing that no one has ever actually witnessed this, because it's just one of those things that I kind of wish someone was with me when it happened. But I'd just be walking along the street or whatever, down the shops. I used to have people come up to me just randomly, and they would just say things that I would just like smile and nod and be polite. They'd walk away and I'd cry because what they said hit like just really, really random things. That's what I mean. It was almost like they were being a messenger for something or someone. Very, very odd. And that, I think things like that would happen. So that's why things would sort of increase, and then I'd get these massive things that would shake me up. You know, the friendship group, my dad passing away. The other really big thing for me after that would have been, oh gosh, everything's pre and post COVID, isn't it? So this was just before, I know, it was just before COVID. And I remember this really well because, again, this was at the same job. So late 2019, very stressed again, but at this point to a very different level. My body was showing signs that I was very stressed. I'd never had any kind of, I don't know what it is, a dermatitis or eczema or something in my life, but you know, my whole lower face was just in this horrible like dermatitis. I'd have thinning hair and once, like I was exhausted, I was tired. I could sleep 12 hours and I'd still need another 12. It didn't, it wouldn't matter. My body was starting to say, hey, listen, you're not listening to us. So, we're going to make you listen. And at that point, I spoke with my husband. I said, look, because again, I was blaming my job. I said, I can't do this anymore. Look, it pays well. It ticks all the boxes. I can't do it. And he said, that's all right. If you want to resign, I'll support you. I'll back that. So I did, again, resigned. And my boss said, I can't remember the exact words, but he accepted it, the resignation. And I said, all right, I'll give you, I think it was maybe 4 weeks notice I had to give. But I was happy to give a little bit more. And about a week later.
Did you just hear yourself, Nadia? I was happy just to give a little bit more.
Just hanging there.
I know. See, that's what I mean. But that's because I felt, even though I felt like it was the right decision for me.
Of course, yeah.
Because I don't want to inconvenience people. I don't want to, and we'd worked together a very long time. At that point, I was with him and that company for 12 years. So it was a long time. And I didn't want to inconvenience him too much. I said, look, I'll give you a little bit more. He's obviously been stewing on it because about a week later, he had a discussion with me. And as I said, we were quite, we're quite friendly. We've known each other many, many years, and we're always very open and honest with each other. And I actually can't remember the exact words that he said, but he essentially called it out for what it is. He actually said, the problem's not the job, it's you. Oh. And this, but like not in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was essentially saying, look, I'm not going to stop you from leaving. He said, but if you do, he's like, this problem will follow you. Oh. He was like, you need it. Again, this was just like, it was like something.
What a lovely person.
Yes. We're using him to, And so he gave me this talk about, having to make sure I've got good balance, make sure I'm doing things I enjoy, like this whole pep talk essentially. And at this point, this is how I know it was just before COVID, because he said, oh, I know this COVID thing's, it's going to ramp up soon. Probably not the best time to be looking for a job. But I said, no, it'll be fine. It'll blow over. Like everyone thought. It'll be fine. He's like, oh, no, stay. And I was like, oh, gosh, what do I do? So I said, give me a little bit to think about it. Before I knew it, we were in lockdown. Yeah. And I said, oh, righto, better not leave. And that was actually the best thing for me at that point. Like the way, the timing, the way everything lined up. So I was at breaking point. I wanted to leave, but at the same time, I was very conflicted. I wanted to leave because I thought my job was the problem, but I loved the job and I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
I felt very, very conflicted. So COVID, although I disagreed with a lot of things there, one thing I can say was of benefit to me was it came just at the right time, because it allowed me to slow down, switch off, take a breather, and really start reevaluating again what it is I need to be doing. And again, had no clue. So yeah, that was probably another big turning point for me was my boss going, it's not the job, it's you. But in a very loving way, because he really called me out for my crap, basically. And he's always been very good at that. And yeah, having that time to, I suppose, reset my mind, my body, have that break from the fast pace that I was going. Really needed that.
Yeah.
So a bit of space to be left with no one but yourself to explore and ask the questions and to sit with.
Which is perfect, because I think the next question we're going to jump into, which I think is perfect for where we are too, is when did you first notice a shift in your thoughts about the world? Which is ironic when we've gone into lockdown.
The world as it is, the world as it is now, or
back then, like when was it? When did you start realizing that the world wasn't how you thought it was? Like that,
because as you say, in your corporate world, and then you've got more spiritual friends gathering around you.
And also with COVID, I think that opened a lot of people up to a different kind of world that they were viewing now, instead of a world that they thought they were viewing before.
And I love that at a point where you're about to say, okay, I'm leaving my job, that's the problem, and that you're faced with like it's not the job, it's you. And then lockdown happens, it's like, oh, okay, massive crossroads, earthquake opening up in front of me, earth opening up in front of me. What do I do? Which side of the chasm am I on?
So so I suppose in terms of when I started seeing the world differently, it's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen the world differently. I think I've always been, like I said, I was always questioning everything. I never took anything at face value. One thing I was always taught, again, by my dad was, don't, even if it was, as a teenager, things would go on and you'd hear gossip, or he would just say, don't judge by what other people are doing or saying. Look at yourself.
Yes.
So that applied for everything. So I've always been like that. I think for me, the biggest shift then was not so much in my way of thinking, but in learning how a lot of other people around me thought. Because I feel like at that time, people became a lot more comfortable to speak up. Either way, whichever way they were going. And so I found that more interesting, finding out, people I thought perhaps weren't so aligned with me, in fact were, they just never spoke. It was really interesting to see people come out of the woodwork, I suppose.
It was like when the dust settled, you could see where people really were at, kind of thing. Yeah.
And and on that, it's I'm not a take sides kind of person either. So I've got
that kind of situation forced us to be taking sides if you chose.
It did, it did, which I never ever agreed with. I was always of the opinion, you do what you want as long as it's not harming anyone. Like, what does it matter? And whatever that may be in life, there are some choices that some people make in their life that's great for them. It's what they need, and that's absolutely fine. Who am I to judge? But I expect the same in return.
That
at that time was not happening. As you said, it was all very divided. It was a very divided time. People had to pick sides, and I just didn't see why that had to be, and I still don't see why that has to be. Just accept people for who they are.
Exactly.
I think there was something bigger going on there.
Divide and conquer.
Yes, definitely. And I didn't want to play a part of that game.
Yeah.
So did
I-
that, as you're saying, like with noticing that people who you thought weren't so aligned actually turned out to be aligned, did that kind of make you feel a little bit, you know, I'll say safer and being more vocal yourself, or safer and being more visible yourself as a spiritual person, or as a person interested in things that are a little bit unusual?
Yeah, it did. It did. I did feel a lot more comfortable, particularly around those people as well, to speak about those kind of things. And so, some of my friends now, we often laugh. We say, "Oh gosh, if anyone could overhear us, we'd get committed." Like talking about things that have happened or things that are going on, and I just think, oh, but it made me definitely a lot more comfortable around.
A bit more certain.
Yeah, a bit more certain. And it was quite interesting because, like I said, there were people who, like I made contact again with a lady who I had worked with like 20 years prior, who I had no idea she was into this kind of stuff too. And we've got up quite a few times since. And, I remember saying to her one day, when we worked together, were you into this stuff then? Or she goes, oh yeah. And I said, oh, I wish I knew. Like we could have had such
funny, isn't it?
conversations.
It's funny how nobody feels safe to talk about it, or they feel like they're going to be judged, and the weirdest thing is most of the time it's the people that are directly around us.
Yeah.
We just don't give, we don't, because we're afraid to kind of probably speak up and talk about it, then others are as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking back on a lot of things, or people even that have crossed my paths or situations in my life, it's quite funny how, for example, with that particular lady, she'd crossed my path, and yes, we were friendly, we worked together, but there was nothing more than that, really. Yeah. And then we happened to cross paths again. It's almost like, well, you didn't pay attention to her now, so
yes,
again.
It's like one sentence that you have in a conversation now, as opposed to then, opens up that other part and of each other to step into that awareness of each other. And I think often when we're in certain roles, we walk in that door, we put that hat on, and we leave the other parts of us outside instead of taking them with us. So we don't we're not often, I feel that this is a part of the past, like, from the times that we're stepping into now, where we don't wear the universal hat, we put on different hats to be in different positions, and therefore kind of not really being ourselves wherever we were.
Yeah, and I believe that played a lot to do, or had a lot to do with me being so miserable for so many years.
Yeah. I'm so glad you moved out of that one.
Yeah, honestly. And
big one.
And this is what I was going to say. This is what earlier I said. You'll never guess the ending to this one. I was talking about my job.
Yes.
Because I still do work for him.
Oh,
I still
wow.
do work there. This where you work. I wanted to quit so many times, and I'm the happiest I've been there.
Yeah.
Wow.
The job hasn't changed.
You attempted to walk away from yourself without actually understanding yourself, and the job was a part of the self. So you could have been walking away from. And
I still do some work for him. So it's crazy how. He was right. It wasn't the job. It was me.
Yeah.
100% right. Because when I started embracing more of who I was, first of all, learning who that is, embracing it, and not having to put those different hats on everywhere, or not so much anyway.
Yeah.
That in itself is a huge awakening, or a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Because you're finally allowing your soul to just express itself the way that it wants to.
Yeah.
And there's so much beauty in there, isn't it, that just is waiting to be shared. So can I ask, like, when you was saying about having like the stress and the anxiety and working with that, was that part of, like, did you have support then to help with those how you were feeling then? Was that part of you gathering like strength or awareness to explore yourself more, or was it perhaps your
Yeah.
dad pushing you to little?
Yeah, look, the whole stress, anxiety, depression thing started probably really hit me hard 2012 with the whole thing that happened
Oh
with the
yes, sorry.
friends. And then sort of spiraled from there. But you know, in terms of support, look, I didn't really it's funny actually. I decided to finally see a was it like a psychologist, and so my GP referred me. Didn't like the one that he sent me to, you know, just didn't gel. And
Yeah.
I didn't know really what to expect. I hadn't been to anyone like that before, but just wasn't feeling it. So I went to a few. It's going to sound terrible, but then I went to one and I was like, oh, I like this one. And I think I had only like 2 appointments with her, but loved her. She was great. I was like, she gets me. Like, you know, we speak the same language. And then a couple of weeks after my last appointment with her, I received an email from their office saying that she had passed away. And so I know it sounds terrible, but I was like, oh, now I can't see her.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? So I saw all these other psychologists.
That's quite an ending, isn't it, to the relationship?
It is. I remember thinking, I'm trying to get help here. Like, what's going on?
You know what I keep getting? I keep getting with your whole story, with everything you keep telling me, I keep thinking you have been like, there's some people that are in your, like, that have come into your world. You know, they say people are all coming in for us. You know, your father, the women that you used to hang out with, boss, even this lady, everybody's coming to play their role with you for you to become who you are like now. Yes. And it's quite a big
really
role.
Does.
To the point where people will say, okay, my part's done. I'm now going.
I'm leaving.
Yeah. But it was funny because, you know, I hadn't really thought about it till now that I'm talking about it, but, you know, I could never find anyone I was happy to have as a psychologist or anything like that. And I tried all these other things, you know, like Chinese medicine, Reiki, like tried everything at that point, like through those years. I feel like I've tried everything. And nothing was working. But nothing was working. But now in hindsight, looking back, it's because I didn't need any of that at all.
Yeah.
You know, because I wasn't depressed. I wasn't anxious. If anything, I think it was like my soul being trapped, you know, just screaming out, and I wasn't listening. And so it was manifesting in these physical and emotional and, you know, mental symptoms. So of course I wasn't going to gel with any psychologist or counselor or whoever, because it's not what I needed.
No.
You know, so they were literally ripped away from me. And then it was sort of terrible. But yeah, that was really horrible.
And when you said about this one that you did gel with speaking the same language, it's kind of like what I also hear is like what's inside you was being activated because it was what you knew. Whereas people weren't speaking the same language, what your soul was sort of like, no. And then it's like, oh, we're speaking the same language. And then it's like you start, and your soul is getting that, okay, now she's talking what we know. Come on, kid, you know this.
Yes.
So I had all these little surroundings. So it was, for me, it was a very long, drawn out process. And look, it still is. I don't feel like anyone is ever
there
fully awake. Like, you're not, until you become consciousness, you're not. And there's so much more to go. But yeah, now I try and listen to the nudges so they don't become big shoves.
Yeah.
But you know, that's hard too.
It is hard.
I mean,
it's perfect. So this is another question that I think will be very relevant in where we are right now is, you know, that we've noticed a big shift in awareness in the world around self-worth and feelings of self-value. How does this energy sit with you and your life and part of your awakening journey around that self-worth and self-love and all of that? How do you connect back into that?
It's interesting you should bring that up, actually, because I think it was literally yesterday or the day before I commented on a Facebook post it was asking about whether anyone had noticed any particular patterns with their QHHT clients. And I said, actually the last few weeks I've noticed many of my clients come in with themes around self-love, self-acceptance.
Yeah.
It is a big theme at the moment. But for me personally, I can comfortably say I'm happy with who I am. I used to think, I suppose, like many people, you don't like yourself, you don't love yourself, that's a process in itself to get to. I suppose I always felt like I had to be something or like I needed to be something, or I felt like there was always a goal to achieve. But I don't view myself or life like that anymore. There is no end goal. I always see it as I'm just always evolving, growing, learning. There is no end goal for me. So the self-love and acceptance comes quite easily when you're not, I don't know how to put it, you're not sort of striving for a goal and missing out and feeling different. Like, I know it's not like I don't have some ambitions or things that I want to do, sure, but I never look at it as an end goal. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll do this bit next, and then maybe I'll grow in there, or I'll learn a little bit more there. But for me, that's huge with the self-love and self-acceptance.
Do you think it's more too because now you're more comfortable with sitting in who Nadia is in the space of evolution? Let's just look at it like that. And where your role plays in, say, the QHHT and the way that your loving exchange with your clients and all that is fulfilling you. So the self-worth it's just a natural occurrence because you're now doing more of what you're to do.
Exactly. And when I started with QHHT, I thought to myself, well, like I really wanted to do it, but I also thought, is this another course I'm going to start and not finish? Because I used to do that a lot too, thinking, this is what I can do, and then it just didn't stick. But that wasn't the case at all, and that was really having my first QHHT session was an awakening as well, part of it, another shove. But doing that point from when I did the course was another one as well, because I couldn't shut it off. I needed to finish this course, and that's never happened with me with anything else. Absolutely loved it. Loved each of my sessions that came after that, and that feeling of not just helping people, but I suppose for me, what makes the quantum healing hypnosis techniques so powerful is they're not coming to me I'm not giving them the answers. I'm not giving them any information. I'm not reading them. None of that comes into it. They're doing it for themselves. I'm just helping them to get to that place where they can do that.
Do it.
And that's quite empowering in itself, and it feels very fulfilling when a client walks out and they have much greater clarity than when they walked in and things in their life.
That's a beautiful thing. You can't buy that feeling.
No, you can't. And my husband thinks I'm crazy because I do my business, plus I still work for that other job, and I just don't stop. And he's like, where do you get the energy? Because I'd be the kind of person before, I had no energy because I was so, I thought, stressed and everything. I had no energy. I could sleep and sleep and sleep, and but now I just don't stop. And I don't have an issue with that.
It's like you get plugged in, isn't it, when you're doing something that is fulfilling and satisfying, and an expression, as Jo said, the conduit of who you are and what you're here for. I just feel that girl who saw, was connected with the spirit world. was always a part of you, isn't it, to be able to facilitate this connection between worlds.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because everyone can, like, as clients, anyone can connect. Everyone can. They've got that ability to.
Yeah.
They just either don't know how, or they haven't tried, I suppose, but we all have this part of us that's just buried, and a lot of us could be so deep, but it is that all-knowing part of ourselves. It's that part that's connected to everything and everyone, and it's learning to connect with that part of ourselves that the QHHT will do for people.
Yeah, and I guess that's that thing, isn't it, when, as you say, we all have the gift, but it's again like when you're a child and you see a spirit, but because there's nobody talking around this in our everyday conversation, we don't really understand what it is that we're experiencing. And there's not talk, like, when you've mentioned around having friends who are spiritual and get to talk around different things, and that activates parts of yourself to do more of what comes naturally. If we talked more around this stuff, we'd be each naturally be able to tap into what you just shared, that
we'd feel safe
feel safe and have tools to take us there. Love it.
Do you want to ask?
Well, I wanted to say, like, when you're talking about the tiredness and the stress, like, what do you do now to support yourself to stay in the moment, and as you say, you've got all this energy. How do you support Nadia?
Do you know what? I am not your typical, stereotypical, I should say, spiritual type person. I don't meditate.
Who is these days?
I know, but sometimes I have some clients say to me, and not in a bad way, more of a comment at the end. They're like, "Oh, when we came to your place for a set, I was expecting, I don't know,
candles and
crystals and all these chakra charts and all that kind of stuff." Like, literally, it's like in a which, again, it's funny, when we built this house, we didn't know why we were building this space that we built. We just felt like we had to build it, and it's where I do my sessions now. But
fantastic.
I know, it's funny, but it has like a wet bar as a couch. It's more like a lounge room, theater room type setup.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like in a lounge room having a chat with them, and and stuff like that.
Lovely.
Yeah. But I'm not that kind of person where I need to. And so, again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not me. I'm not the chakra chart on the wall, massage table kind of person. I want someone to feel like they're sitting there having a conversation with me as a friend in a lounge room.
Nice.
Having a chat.
Yeah.
Before we lay them down the couch for the regression. So yeah, it's a little bit different for me. But so go back to how I settle in. So yeah, I don't meditate. I have to burn off energy, and that could be physical or mental for me.
Yeah.
So physical, on the weekend, for example, I decided I'm just going to wash all the windows in the house, and that took me just about all day. Right? But
What star sign are you?
Pardon?
What star sign are you?
Aries.
Aries.
Oh my God.
I was gonna actually say Libra.
Oh, there you go. No, well, I decided I had to collect, but trust me, those bursts don't last very long. I'll probably get another cleaning burst in about 6 months.
Yeah.
For me, I don't like cleaning, but usually for me, it's more mental things that I need to do. So that could be, I've always loved learning different things. So I'll just go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole on the internet. I'll read something and I think, there'll be a word, or it'll talk about some ancient book or something, and I'll be like, oh, what's that? And then I'll have to go and look at that, and I can get lost for hours. And for me, that's my meditation, because I'm in my own little world learning. Like, I love it. For me, that's my meditation. That's how I relax.
I love that you said that. Yeah, it just lets
That's
people off the
beautiful.
hook, because I think a lot of people have a perception that, you know, to be spiritual or to be on that path or to have anything to do with the ethereal world, you have to be meditating or you have to be sitting in silence for this time, or lighting candles or incense. And that's
Yoga every day, yoga every day, or
I think there's been a massive shift, especially even in the last 12 months, around what it looks like. It's all bullshit. It's like, no, it's your essence, and that's what's beautiful about it. It's your unique essence that you're bringing to the table, and whoever resonates with that will show up.
Yeah. Oh, look, I agree. I mean, again, nothing. I've got friends that are like your stereotypical spiritual. You know, they've gone vegan. They're meditating every day. Like, you know, almost every extreme you can think of, I know someone like that. And I have absolutely nothing against that. If that's what makes them, if that's what they feel they need to do, great.
Perfect.
You know, go for it.
Yeah.
You know, just don't hurt anyone and we're all good.
Yeah.
You know?
Again, choose what resonates, and not having to fit into a box of what it should be, because then often people don't ever attain it because it's an unrealistic goal for their
Yeah, you know, so yeah, and I think again that just coming back to that previous question about self-love and acceptance, I think that's also part of it. Not feeling like I have to fit a mold.
Oh, that's so true.
Beautiful.
You know? It's just saying, no, I am who I am, and that's take it or leave it. There's someone for everyone.
Very, very powerful statement. Now we are down to our last question, which has gone quick. We're now an hour 20, which literally has flown. It's flown. So Nadia, how do you see the world, and what do you see next for us, just through your eyes?
Oh, big question.
Yeah.
Look, I think, honestly, I think we truly are, I know this gets said a lot, but we really are responsible for our own world. So I think the world can be whatever you want it to be. You know, I don't see the world as being good or evil or turning to shit or you know, all sunshine and rainbows. I think we really do create our own reality. So it can be whatever you want. I mean, so for me, I know my world, wow, it's interesting actually. I never really thought about this. My world moving forward, well, what would I want to be? Look, I just want to keep helping people and just being, I just don't want to get to the point of feeling like my body's falling apart again. You know, I just want to do what I feel called to do for as long as I feel called to do it. I want to be able to follow different interests, different passions, and not feel like I can't integrate different things because that's not the norm, or, you know, not expected, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, look, I honestly, I think we really are creators of our own world, our own reality. So it can be whatever people want it to be. So people are focusing on the bad that's going on. Well, you know, that's what they're going to attract as well.
Yeah. Yes.
You know.
And very dynamically, isn't it? Like, do you feel like you know, with working in the energy of quantum healing, that, you know, timelines are very quick now?
I think, you know, I actually feel like there was a big shift around I would say sometime, everyone says 2012. I feel like it was sometime between 2012, 2014. I feel like there was a big shift. I feel like there was another shift, well, big ones anyway, you know, around COVID time as well, which I think was a lot more obvious to a lot more people.
Yeah.
But look, the possibility for other timelines or other realities is always there too. I mean, it was always, it's hard to explain. So if you have a thought, let's say, for example, you need to make a decision. and like an important decision, like I don't know whether I leave my job or not, and then
Let's just go with that one.
it's the first one that came to mind. But let's say, you know, seriously, like, you know, you're like, do I take this job or leave this or whatever? When you sit there and contemplate that, you're actually because you're giving the thought and emotion behind it, you're creating those realities. You're actually creating two. Now, which path you take in your conscious and physical world doesn't mean the other one doesn't exist. So it's like parts of you are experiencing different timelines constantly. And that will happen every time you make a different decision, big decisions.
Yeah.
Things that you give energy to. You create
So
it.
Yeah. Wow. So this is the work that you do now?
Yeah. I love the QHHT. I mean, I do the past life regression events. I do roughly one a month. I don't know how long I'll be doing those for. They're fun. Like, I do enjoy them. But really the one-on-one QHT sessions are nothing beats it.
Yeah, it's really powerful stuff. I actually heard someone say, and this is just someone's perception and viewpoint, it's not necessarily the truth, that, and it was a channeled message actually saying, you know, that relying on past life history is a waste of time. That was from a channeled being saying that what we need to focus on now is moving forward and what's happening there, not necessarily what's been, because we can't change, although we know that it's all happening on the one timeline. But so that was an interesting viewpoint that I'd never heard before, because a lot of people do focus on that past life, why I'm like this now, and I think their view was, don't worry about that, because you can change in every moment.
Correct. And that's, do you know what? I don't know if I 100% agree with that. I like 98% agree with that.
Yeah.
Funnily enough. Because I think that, like, for example, QHHT is not past life regression. Right? People get the two confused. So with QHHT, the client or the client's subconscious, or it's not subconscious like the psychologists talk about, it's like their higher self, their oversoul. I'm so used to calling it the subconscious because that's what Dolores called it.
Yes,
and she admitted, she's like, I don't know. Yeah, she's like, I don't know what else to call it. So it's just ingrained in me now. But you know, the session is completely guided by their subconscious.
Yeah.
So some people, yes, go to a past life. How many people go to a past life would be, I was being to tally up the stats on this. If I had to take a guess, I'd say maybe only 40 or 50% of my clients go to a past life.
Yeah.
The rest will sometimes even regress to their current life.
Yeah.
They may go to, you know, out in the universe. They may go, even go back to source. People can go back to really, really interesting places, or visit really interesting places in that journey. And being guided by their subconscious or higher self, the client will always get what they need at that point in time, that bit of information that they need in order to move forward. If that happens to be information that's come from a past life, then the subconscious will show that. If that's what they need to move forward. So that's what I mean. I agree with that statement. We should be moving forward. I don't think we should purposely be constantly looking at things or answers in our past, because the answers may not be there. Why focus on that? So in a QHHT session, with asking the subconscious to bring forward whatever it is they need at this point in time, you know they're going to get what they need. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If it's from a past, if it's from a future, if it's information they get from going back to source, or I've had people go to parallel lives where they know they visited themselves on another timeline. It doesn't really matter where. I say to my clients all the time, look, it doesn't actually matter in the session where they go. It actually has no, like, it's not important where they go. If it's the past, source, it doesn't matter. What matters is the message that it's bringing through for them. That's the important part.
Or for our instance, even when we're listening, and listen to books. Like I listen to all of her audiobooks and I get so much from them. You know,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that happens for you as the therapist, you know.
Yeah. There's I mean, I've had a lot of interesting cases, as I'm sure.
Have you had anyone come through for you?
As in
someone's come through to give you a message?
I have actually.
Yeah. Wow.
I had it doesn't happen that often. It's like it comes through from obviously the client's talking, but they'll say, oh, you know, actually I've got a message for you, and they'll relay it. It doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think maybe if I had to hazard a guess, maybe only 2 or 3 times it's ever happened to me. Which, you know, I'm not upset about that.
No, of course not.
It's the client's session.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
The reason I asked,
if they got something they want to pass on, that's fine too.
Yes. Yeah. No. Because Dolores, the book I'm reading recently, was exactly that. She had one of her clients come through and said, you know, she told her why she was here and all that, which you probably know all about. But yeah, it was very, very interesting.
Yeah. So look, it can happen. And you know, it's always interesting when it does, because they'll say, well, you know, but that usually happens in the what we call it, the subconscious part, because we have all in the session, you know, for the regression part, we have the subconscious bring forward whatever experience or experiences that person needs.
Yeah.
And we might go through 1, 2, or 3 of those, depending how much we have to explore each one. But then when that part's finished, we then say because, you know, but I call in their subconscious and ask permission to speak to it. And it's at that point that you really get the gold. It's not so much like, it's like you get all the pieces to the puzzle, or some of the pieces to the puzzle in the experiences. But when you speak to the subconscious, that's where I turn into like like I was a child, but why? You know, I have to know. And that's probably what's geared me up so well for this, because I'll ask question after question after question to find out, why was that person shown that? Why bring that forward? Why was that relevant? Why do they need to? What does that mean? Like, some people have some very symbolic sessions as well, where they may be shown, I don't know, birds, and then they're shown something else and something else. So I'll be like, okay, I'm thinking, all right, this is symbolic. And so I'll say, okay, why the birds? Why were they, I don't know, blue? What was going on? What does it mean? What does it mean now for them? What are you trying to tell them? And I dig all that out. So, I mean, it's one thing to have a regression, but then getting to that point where you can essentially just quiz the subconscious and drag that information out, that's where the gold is. And so many clients that haven't had that, that haven't had a session before, don't understand that, and they're so focused on what experience am I going to have. Which, I mean, that's cool too, sure, but the gold,
so much more there for you. And so when you say with the QHHT, the past life regression is a part of it, or the past life, you were saying the past life, what's different about the past life regression as opposed to QHHT?
Yeah, so the past life regression that I do, it's actually, it was also developed by Dolores Cannon, the one that I do, and it's developed to be done as a group session. So it's like a guided meditation. You don't go as deep as a QHHT session. You know, the guided regression probably goes for maybe half an hour, just that regression part, whereas like QHHT go for a few hours.
Yeah.
So it's not as deep, and it's very, because it's a guided group meditation. You're actually asking the subconscious to take them to a past life, and then you're asking the subconscious about different experiences in that life, to show it to them, you know, and how they passed away, and any messages that want to come forward, things like that. But because it's not a one-on-one, two-way conversation, I can't quiz and dig deeper.
Okay.
Right. So obviously at the end, but also can't quiz through that experience. And with a past life regression, you don't call in the subconscious. You know, it's not like I said, it's not a two-way conversation.
So the therapist is basically there just to hold space
to facilitate
it.
regression into that regression timeline.
Yeah, it's more like a guide, like a guided visualization meditation that you take people through. So you're asking them to, you know, for example, once you guide them to their past life, you know, you might be saying to them, okay, well, you know, look at your, I don't know, look at your feet, what kind of shoes you're wearing, look at your clothes, look at your hair, do you feel male or female? You know, you're asking kind of really generalized questions because you've got to appeal to the group. And then you're asking them to, okay, let's go have a look at where you live, let's have a look where you work, let's have a look what you did, you know, and then you obviously give them time to process that. Then you ask them the next question, and you're sort of doing that as a whole group.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes I have people come to me at the end and they'll say, oh, actually, I didn't go to a past life, but I went to this, this, and this, and then this came through, or, and I'll just say, okay, well, that's okay too. It is whatever your subconscious wants to bring forward, you know.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So this is if people that are listening, our listeners want to have either a QHHT session or a past life regression, you can do all this through Zoom and do all that online?
No, well, the QHHT is
in-house,
in person only.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely in person only. The past life regression meditations that I do them online.
Yep.
I've got, well, by the time this recording comes out, it'll be over with because I've got one this Saturday. I don't have another one scheduled in at this point.
Okay.
But I've got one in Kui at the Wellness Room in Kuirup in February, and Macabre Studio in Cheltenham March.
Beautiful.
But yeah, if any more that come out, like they're always up on my on my link tree.
Oh, perfect.
On my website.
Yeah, that's where I was going. So we will put all the links up for your information on the end of this podcast. So anyone that's listening that's interested in doing maybe a group past life regression, or if you're in Melbourne, our listeners in Melbourne want to go and have a session with Nadia, which would be just mind-blowing, I can imagine.
It's
on your website.
It's amazing.
Check it out. Yeah.
It just fills you with excitement just to think of the whole experience of being in a QHHT.
Yes.
You know, cocoon, and, you know,
hearing what your higher self or your has to say to you, like, don't get
unfiltered.
You're going to stuck around.
Yeah, and you know, it's the regression part's recorded as well. So, you know, I mean, that's for two reasons. Firstly, so that during the regression, you don't have to think about, oh, I must remember this. What does that mean? You don't want to analyze anything at that point. You just want to talk.
Yeah.
That's all they have to do is just talk to me. And then, you know, a lot of people wake up and they'll say, oh, you know, oh yeah, I think I remember everything. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. We're under for, I'll look at my recorder. I'll be like, oh, you know, it was 2 hours. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
20 minutes. And I was like, you don't remember everything.
Yeah, wow. A bit like the podcast.
Exactly.
Every time we're having fun, it literally flies.
I just want to ask, besides Ghostbusters, was one of your TV series X-Files?
Yes.
I knew it.
Yeah, I saw you and Scully all the way through, girl.
Yeah, Mulder and Scully. Yeah, they were good. They were good.
It's really been such a pleasure spending time with you, Nadia, and just exploring the whys. And you've got such a beautiful, calm presence, and would be just beautiful to sit in space with you and experience that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure, and I love having you know, my clients here. You know, we spend the first few hours of the session, we just talk, and I need to know all about them. And I just love hearing people's stories. Even though, you know, people come to me with some really horrible things that, you know, they've had done to them, or that they've done to others even. And, you know, I just like making that space where they can just offload, talk. In an environment where, you know, I'm not going to judge them. I'm not, you know, and to be fair, it's very confidential because I don't remember a thing.
Well, you probably
My
might
friends
see.
joke about it.
Yeah.
I've got a memory like a sieve. Actually, I've got one really funny quick story, which this just shows how bad my memory is. I had a client, and well, obviously a client, but one day I turned up to I go to a spiritual development class, and there was this new lady sitting there, and I introduced myself, and she's like, all of a sudden she said, "Oh, hi, Nadia," and I thought, "Ooh,
No.
I know you from somewhere. Like I must know you." The way she said it, and I looked at her, and she said, "Oh, this is my name." She said, "Oh, I had a session with you."
I knew you were going to
And
say
I
that.
looked at her
I had
and
a
I went,
5-hour
just went,
session.
I know, and I said to her, I said, "Oh, like silly me. Like this just never happened to me before. I bumped into a client like after,
Yes.
and she said, yeah, I had a session with you," and I said, "Oh, was it one of my group ones?" Or like thinking,
Yeah.
no. And she goes, "No, I came to your house," and I went, "Oh." I go, "How long ago was that?" Thinking it must have been a long time. She goes, "Oh, 2 months ago." And I was like,
Oh, classic.
and I said to her, I laughed. I was like, "I'm so, I don't," like she didn't even look familiar.
Yeah.
I was like, "I don't remember you."
Yeah.
And she jokes about it now. Like
Yeah.
I've heard her
funny.
say to people, "Yeah, oh, don't worry, she,
She won't remember you.
she'll forget." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks."
There's a
But,
part
you
of
know,
you that knows it's all stored up there. You don't need to hold it in here. It's like,
Well, that's what I mean. I think it's actually a blessing because I don't need to remember. I don't need to know. It's not for
Yeah.
me. So I
Yeah.
don't need to take that on. So
You don't need
yeah,
to. You don't
in
need
the beginning, I used to get really frustrated because practitioners would talk about sessions and, "Oh, have you had this happen or have you had that happen?" And I'd think, "I think I have. I just can't quite remember." And it used to bother me, but now I'm like, you know what? It's actually really good.
yeah. I think it's really
beautiful.
good. Keep it nice and light for you, like a bird.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
She comes in my dreams.
Thank you for listening to our Girl Awakening podcast. We are also on YouTube as Girl Awakening. We'd love to see you there with comments on how our guests resonated with you or your own awakening. Please share the love with a like and subscribe while you're there. A blissful thank you to Ksenia Luki, the amazing artist behind our theme song. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.